reflects the popularity of the preacher. The Sunday evening service suggests the popularity of the congregation. And the midweek services reflect the popularity of the Lord. Let's hope the popularity of the Lord is the reason we're present in all the services. We've had a wonderful occasion today to worship, both this morning and this afternoon. We have been able to encourage one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing, making melody in our hearts to the Lord. The last song we were singing, Brother Tedley's song, the man who wrote many hymns and lived to be 104 years of age, heaven holds all to me. The 23rd Psalm, I think the alto and soprano duet in that song makes your hair stand on your head when you hear it. It's so beautiful. Wonderful opportunity. And that reflected in our prayer. We are here to worship God in spirit and in truth. Your elders have been discussing at some length what might be done to help increase the number who attends our Sunday evening and Wednesday services, as well as our Bible class services here at the congregation. We have thought of a number of things that we might do, might initiate. We want to encourage our song leaders to look upon the service with great anticipation, have the songs selected in advance, and if so, confer with the speaker and coordinate them with the lesson. Be enthusiastic about leading the singing. Don't cut the song services short. And those who lead us in prayer do so as fervently as our brother did just a while ago, and encourage our preacher to have challenging lessons that will cause us to want to come and hear and be taught those lessons. So we, as the personnel who lead the congregations, can do our part in making it more meaningful and more encouraging for people to come back and be a part of these evening services. As was true in our morning service today, we want to look in, or this afternoon it is, isn't it? We want to look in on an Old Testament passage. 2 Samuel chapter 18 and verse 29. One of the most important questions in all the Bible, and one of the most tragic questions in this particular case in all of the Bible. Here is the lament of David, the father of Absalom, raising the question, is the young man Absalom safe? In this case, it was a tragic answer to the question. No, your son is not safe. Your son is dead. There are a lot of important questions found in the Bible, numerous questions, in fact. One of the first ones, hath God said, raised by the devil himself in the book of Genesis, trying to confuse and did delude and mislead Mother Eve and Father Adam by raising that question, hath God said? And then in the same book of Genesis to Abel, or to Cain, where is thy brother Abel? What a challenging question that was for Cain. What an embarrassing question it was for him. For he knew, as God had known, that he had killed his own brother Abel. But you know, that question may sometimes be embarrassing for us too. Where is thy brother? Then there are some other challenging questions. Job raised one of them many years ago when he asked, if a man die, shall he live again? I think perhaps the most important of all, in the New Testament especially, is Jesus' question in Matthew 16, when he said, what is a man profited if he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Well, the question that Jesus proposed here was not being challenged because the Lord sought information himself in the question, but to challenge our thinking. But in the case of David, it was indeed a question to seek an answer, and the answer brought sorrow to his heart. When we consider the background of this question, it becomes even more remarkable. Absalom, the son of David, was not a very good son, had not been from the time of his youth. He stood at the gate of the capital, or the palace of his father, the king, and he would entice the people as they would come in and out, and tell them how much better he would be as their leader than his father was, and stole the hearts of the people. Later on in his life, the immediate background for this question was he amassed an army of 12,000 men to lead them against the palace of his own father, the king. And when David learned of the 12,000 men marching against him, he fled in the night barefoot, going across the brook Kidron and going up on Mount Moriah, and there, Mount Olivet rather, and there he wept bitterly, leaving behind in his house nothing but 10 concubines. Everything else was carried away. And then Absalom and his army arrives at the palace, and his father had already gone. But his servant said to him, in essence, why don't you make it look even worse for your daddy? Go in and sleep with his concubines. And this he did. Then lady said, let us now pursue my father and overtake him. In the meantime, David's servants learned of the conspiracy and the attack, and they began to come to David to fight with him and with Joab, the captain of his forces. And as that happened, David said to Joab, before the battle even got underway, deal gently with the young boy Absalom for my sake. Please deal gently with my son. But Absalom was riding upon a mule in pursuit of his dad's life. When his hair was caught in the bough of a tree, he was actually hanged there, suspended between heaven and earth. I suppose a very painful ordeal. One of the servants of Joab, one of the soldiers, saw him there and reported it to Joab. And Joab said, well, did you kill him? In essence, that was the question. No, I was afraid of the wrath of his father. I didn't do that. So Joab himself goes and finds the man hanging from the tree and throws 3 darts into his body. Then 12 other men surrounded him and put him to death. 10 of them, I believe it was, surrounded him and put him to death. He was helplessly hanging on a tree. Then the question, the answer came to David, that the army of Absalom has been routed. We have gained a victory. Rather than rejoicing in that news, David has this lamented cry. Is the young son, my young boy, Absalom, what about him? Is the young man safe? In response, I would that all the enemies of the king were as this young man. And David knew what that meant. He began that great lamentation. Oh, Absalom, my son, Absalom, my son, would to God I had died in your stead. What an anxious cry. What a pitiful cry. But this anxious cry from an anxious father came too late. The question came too late. Is my son safe? David should have answered that question many years before in his own life when he married a heathen wife that became absent. Some of the problems they'll face there can be overcome and set aside by a faithful father or a faithful mother. We had the privilege of having Julio from Cuba in our home for several weeks some years ago. Julio's father was a gospel preacher as well as Julio Jr. And he told us that when he came home from school every day, having been taught in a communist school, his father would sit him down and say, "Now, son, what were you taught today?" And when he would report to his dad what had been said in the classroom, he took his Bible and corrected the mistakes and the errors that he had been taught and set those things aside that his son might know the truth and continue in the truth. So there are painstaking steps that can be taken, careful steps, to see to it that the things, the poison that's being spewed out on TV and various other places to our young people are set aside by the advice and counsel of good fathers and good mothers and set before them in your own life, in our own lives, the proper example. So if they follow in our footsteps, they will be safe. Aid them and assist them diligently in finding their friends and those with whom they will associate. See to it that they receive more than a secular education. You would not, and I would not, dare think of handing a small child a loaded gun or place it under his or her pillow at night where they were sleeping, beyond even the least thought that one would have. God forbid. Yet may I suggest in all candor that we may be handing them something more dangerous than a loaded gun. We may be handing them an electric gadget on which they can view pornography, on which they can find all kind of filth and have their minds completely corrupted. Well, the young woman may find some sex predator that will allure her away to threaten her safety, even her very life. Parents, fathers, mothers, be careful that you know what your child has in his or her hand, so that you will not be saying, "Oh, Absalom, my son Absalom, would to God I had died in your stead." Just this coming Saturday, we have an opportunity as a congregation to join with Christian parents to encourage our young men and our young women, and young men and young women from all over this area in the annual Bible Bowl. And we can be saying and will be saying by our actions at the time of this great event whether or not we want our children to be safe. And is the young man safe? And is the young girl, the young woman, safe? Because we will be here to encourage them, not only with our presence, but with our words as well, to compliment them in their good that they do. It surprises me, and I've been going to Bible Bowl for many, many years, every year. Surprises me every time how well prepared these young people are each year, how much knowledge they have gained, how much they know about the Word of God because of the Bible Bowl. And you and I have that privilege this very week, this very coming Saturday, to tell our young people, we want you to be safe. We want to do our part to see that your safety is guaranteed. We're going to be here to encourage you. You know, it's discouraging when our young people look out over the audience at Bible Bowl and see that more people came to encourage the groups who came from other congregations than are present at the host congregation. That's very, very discouraging. So let us use this wonderful opportunity this very week to help make our young people safe. Is your child safe? As in the case with David, perhaps you and I are the answer to that question in a large measure. Tonight, if you need to obey the Lord, let us help you coming as we stand and as we sing.